If there were a place in the world where you could store and protect the truth, it might be deep in the Rockies, in a field, on a ranch, in a silo, where an American patriot tells you what keeps him awake at night. Now, here is Medal of Honor recipient Drew Dix and words from the Silo.
Welcome, folks, to another episode of Words from the Silo. You know, there's been a lot happening, and I was starting to get some sleep, Brad, but lately I'm not. And the one thing that's starting to bother me a little bit is because I know what the vulnerabilities are in our country, and I look at it through the eyes of someone that usually in my business, capitalize on the vulnerabilities of our enemy. And let's look at it this way. We're somebody's enemy right now. We're so open and so free as a society that it is so easy for someone to embed themselves. In fact, they have. I'll go right out and say they have. Our FBI knows that. And they're not what you could call sleeper cells or all that Tom Clancy stuff, but the fact is they're here, and they've been coming here in great numbers over the last few years. And so I worry about that. And I'll just tell you a little bit of a story. Someone said one time, when you do special ops and stuff, every now and then they want you to talk to a shrink, right? And so one time I came back from doing something, and they said, "Do you have any nightmares, and recurring nightmares?" And I said, "Well, I do." Aha! I said, "What's your recurring nightmare?" You know, and he said, "Could you elaborate a little bit?" And I said, "Yeah, I worry that I'm going to be in this business and I'll never have an enemy that's as open as we are, that we can go in and make a difference so easy." That was my nightmare, that we're never going to have that opportunity to reverse roles and get into their knickers. But so let's get into it, Brad. Here's what I worry about is the United States, and I'll be misunderstood, and to hell with it, but I'll be misunderstood.
That's becoming a disclaimer on every show.
Yeah, I'll be misunderstood, but we're a free country, and there's not a better country in the world, in my opinion. And but we're vulnerable because of our freedoms, and the politicians seem to even double down on some issues when we challenge some effort, and so the politicians say, "Oh, that's against the First Amendment or the freedom of speech." And you know, I'll tell you right now, I don't think the founding fathers thought that freedom of speech meant to harm somebody or to interfere with protection of our country and our citizens. No way. They did everything for the protection of this country, for to protect the foundation of what we stood for. So the very things that make us remarkable is our vulnerabilities, and that's the freedom. And I don't have the answer, but I do know that when you lose the common spirit to protect the republic above all else, we have a vulnerability because we have so many special interests in this country that becomes a weakness, I think.
Okay.
those special interests are taken to a national level to protect somebody's idea of their right. So what we need to do is kind of reinstill the thought that the republic gives us all these freedoms, that protects your individual rights to be however you want to be. So we have to go back and look at the republic almost like a religion. That people that believe in a religion believe in something. You know, one of our most the formidable enemies that we have around the world have something they believe in. It's a religion in most cases, and so they put everything, nothing in front of that.
Yeah.
So getting started on this conversation, we have to understand that where the threats are and where our vulnerabilities are.
Okay. So you had some experience, what is it, now 25 years ago with Homeland Security. Can you tell us give us a little backstory on that, and then how that's evolved in the last 30 years since 9/11?
Yeah, I'd be glad to, and I think it's important. Right after 9/11, and I was in Pueblo here getting ready to get on a plane the next day to go to Boston, actually. And 9 o'clock, first aircraft went into the towers, and that's a pretty unfortunate accident. And then when the second one hit, that's no accident. And so I said, well, I'm not going to Boston. That's when we found out those planes originated from Logan in Boston, Logan Field. So I'm thinking, what am I going to do? The phone rang, boom. Not very long after the second plane hit, maybe that evening. And it was the governor in Alaska, Tony Knowles, and he was saying, we're worried about our infrastructure up here, the oil, and we're very vulnerable there. I'd like you to be my advisor on that. And I said, well, sure, I'd be glad to. I'm in Colorado right now. And he says, well, when can you come back? And I said, well, I'll be heading back real soon. So anyway, I went back to Alaska to be the first director of Homeland Security in Alaska and be on the terrorism task force, the Joint Terrorism Task Force that was run by the FBI and all that. They were putting these together, and I was the state rep.
What was your connection to Governor Knowles at the time? I mean, why do you think he thought of you first, or what? I mean, give me some insight on that.
Well, I don't have. Alaska is a small state, actually, and your governors, and your one congressman, and your two senators. You actually do know them. And I knew Governor Knowles. I'd sat on a podium a couple of times on the dais where we were talking about different issues, and I didn't know him that well, but we had a good relationship, and he was a good governor. He was a Democrat, in my opinion, very conservative in how he ran the state. He's very pro-oil, obviously would be, but he understood the benefits of that. So he knew that I had some background in special operations and that sort of thing. And he was a former military guy. I think he was a specialist 4th or 5th class or something. Nothing, no high rank or anything. But he understood how things worked, and so I was very honored to be called and to put together the Homeland Security Task Force for Alaska. And he also knew that I knew a lot of people in Alaska, and so when I put this task force together, I got the CEOs of Alyeska Pipeline Service, ConocoPhillips, the admiral from the Coast Guard, the SAIC for the FBI, the seniors, not their representative, but the actual CEO of of those entities to put this task force together. And we were very, very effective that way because we didn't have a bureaucracy to have to go through. Everybody knew everybody's time was important, so they got right down to business. And so I put out a deal. I said, incidentally, I remember the first briefing that where I was going to be introduced as quote Homeland Security. They call him the czar, right? Because I had some control over all of the departments when it came to Homeland Security.
Okay.
And so I was waiting for the governor to come in. His team was there, and because Alaska's a big state, they were televising this out to the different, Juneau, Fairbanks, the bigger cities and across the state. And I remember walking in there, and the governor's assistant came up to me and says, here's how it's going to go. The governor will come in, and he's going to tell us what to do, and he's going to introduce you as our Homeland Security advisor. Hadn't been the director yet, but he was putting that position together. So when the governor walked in, he came right up to me, and I said, yeah, Governor, I was just briefed. I'm ready to do whatever you want me to do. He said, wait a minute. He got on the screen. He talked to all of it, the lieutenant governor, and there happened to be in Juneau, and then the different areas around the state. And he said, we got a big problem here, and I'm going to introduce you to the man that's going to tell us what to do. And so here it is. I walked up there and laid it out. And I thought at this time I'd be working for the governor. And he said real clear, he said, he's going to make decisions. If we got time, he's going to tell me. If we don't have time, he's going to make the decision, talking to me, and then right away tell me what he just did.
Yeah.
So he gave me that authority. And that's what you need in tough times.
What would this have been, like just a week after the actual
No,
attack?
this was maybe this might have been a month after.
Month after,
Yeah, because I finally got back to Alaska and everything. I was already working it as the advisor, but when it's a bureaucracy, they didn't have a position.
Yeah.
And so he made me a deputy commissioner, because you just have the commissioners and then your deputies. And so I was a deputy commissioner and director of Homeland Security. And so what I told them was, we're getting back to the vulnerabilities, and I'll look at Alaska in the context of the whole United States. But Alaska, I said, the pipeline is our number one infrastructure that we're worried about as far as Alaska. Because our enemy is in an oil region. If they could harm our energy, then maybe they would be more competitive militarily and economically. But I said, okay, we got 830 miles of pipeline. It's the hardest to defend because of the vastness of it, going right through the wilderness in many places, crossing rivers and whatever. Easiest to repair. The pump station, number one, there was another one that put it over the Brooks Range, and then the terminal in Valdez, easiest to defend and the hardest to repair.
The hardest to repair.
Yeah, because they're massive, and there's a lot of complex pieces of it. And
why is it easy to defend?
Well, because it's the easiest to defend, not easy, but it was just a facility. So physical security, you could implement different things to protect somebody from coming in there and destroying it. The pipeline, is 830 miles long, if I remember right, and it's hard to defend. Some of it's underground, goes through mountains. There's nobody around. It's not along the highway in all places. And so we did some innovative techniques and implemented a few procedures that a little controversial to this day, but it worked. And so I think one of the most controversial things that we did was contact the native corporations, the tribal corporations, because the pipeline would go through most of their land. And I said, you know, guys, you can help us here. You can keep your eyes on that pipeline, protect it for us, and let us know what's going on. Can we carry a rifle? Well, you do anyway, I said. They always have rifles for their hunting and whatever. And I said, that doesn't mean that you go out and shoot white guys or something. No. And they laughed, and it was humorous, but they took it that way. And I'll tell you what, people were worried that I gave, some of those entities that responsibility, because how else? But we couldn't do it. You couldn't have somebody just following the pipeline, because
it's not easy to get to either.
No, somebody could shoot it from a distance, and they were really proud of being able to do that. The ones that I got involved in it, and never had an incident. Never. It was their money. I mean, they get revenue from that, and so. But that was one thing we did that capitalized on made a vulnerability better by using the resources that we have. Vulnerabilities opposing to capabilities. Capabilities, we didn't have the capability to just devote hundreds of National Guard to that pipeline. We used a notification system that the citizens, in this case the Alaska Natives, to let us know if they saw anything unusual. And it was in their interest to do the job, and they were really proud of it. And I got the porcupine quill beads and made me a chief, and really proud of that. And I got them hanging up at my home.
Well, I got to see that next time.
Yeah,
I'm in the house. You don't let me in the house. You just let me in the silo.
On the silo. But anyway, so here we are. We've got vulnerabilities, and that's because we were directly attacked. But our vulnerabilities now haven't changed since before 9/11 or after too much. They were always there. The insider threat was always there to come in and see where an enemy could harm us, our infrastructure.
Yeah.
And so those of us that know what the capabilities of the enemy are and how they operate, very similar to how we would operate in going behind the line somewhere if we were to disrupt an enemy's infrastructure. I mean, that's why Tony Knowles probably picked me. He knew how to do it, how I would do it if I was the bad guy. And so here we are. Fast forward now. Situation here where we've the war between Iran, Israel, and the United States has come to a head. Mm-hmm. And we've exchanged, military might. There's no doubt in my mind that Iran would would bomb us if they could. They said they would, so we ought to believe them. That's the first thing. But here's the problem. For the last 4 or 5 years, our border has been basically open.
Okay.
Now, before we had this big border issue, there was always people coming in. That's what you do in the world of espionage and sabotage and counterintelligence and intelligence operations, is go into each other's country. It's not a secret. And so we had insider threat programs to determine who had been placed in our key installations, or civilian or military. But now we've got vast numbers that have come in that are military age, and with probably training. And Lord knows the government wouldn't have to fund them. We're funding them. We're paying them, giving them money. And so our infrastructure is very vulnerable. And it's so easy to disrupt us. And after 9/11, we did a few things. One, TSA, right? And I was partly responsible for some of that is we put the National Guard at Anchorage International Airport, and had them walk in posts there with M16s and to secure that activity, because they used airplanes, right? Mm-hmm. So we react. So now every airport, international airport, and maybe some others in the United States are manned with National Guard and now TSA at great expense, and they haven't really attacked us that way again. So what I worry about is, let's say the word is to go in and begin taking action against the United States infrastructure or whatever, and they could just make one attempt on a railroad bridge, for example, over some body of water or whatever. I can see it now. We'd have National Guard men and women at flanking posts at every bridge in the United States. Or let's say they decide to hit a power grid. We'd have National Guard, because the law enforcement is not in a position to protect any of that. Then their structure is to protect law and order, right? And they're pretty well tied up, taking care of the citizenry and traffic and the crime. But espionage and outright attacks on our infrastructure would drain them pretty fast. And then here we'd have National Guard at every place. Just like riots in L.A. We put a couple of thousand National Guard there. What if there's a riot in Minneapolis or Chicago or somewhere else and the National Guard were there? They would not be available to do other things. And the war we had in Afghanistan and Iraq, we relied heavily on the National Guard.
Yeah.
And if we had them pulled to protect in each state's infrastructure, then it'd be less military manpower to put in against the enemy. So that bothers me.
How many people do you think it would require to have in these cells or these espionage type of infiltrations to be a real problem inside?
I don't think the numbers is not the issue. It's the right target. You wouldn't have to. Let's say you could, because these pros are the people in the intel business in all these countries are pros. Mm-hmm. It's whether they pick the right strategy or not. It's up to them. But they think they do, and they are professionals. If you could just have one person or two people, one or two people go to a major power grid and just have a remnants of a bomb there left there. It wouldn't even have to have a kinetic discharge. It just could be there, and then with the proper information out there, we'd be worried. Mm. And so you can imagine.
Yeah.
Or every railroad overpass on I-25 or whatever, they'd have somebody there.
So the goal is to spread you thin and get you on your heels?
Yeah, Brad, when I use the term, when people were talking about illegal immigrants, and I would use the term refugees, it's almost a refugee scenario. From World War II, it was very common for countries to flood a neighboring country with refugees. So you tie up your military with refugee control, straggler control, resources to feed them and whatever, and then you got individuals behind your forces that they don't have to necessarily be a part of it, just using them. Our sheer numbers of these quote illegals that have come over to the United States needing support because they're not allowed to work in most cases, but they need to eat for their families and whatever, they could disrupt the communities. That's what I worried about in L.A. and other places at a time when we were just getting ready to go into Iran, and Israel was bombing the hell out of them. What would that? It could have been somebody orchestrated that, you know. I don't think that we already know that there's some people that are funding the riots. I mean, they have these what do you call it? The gang on demand or protester on demand or whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, you know that. There's people marketing that.
So it's diversionary?
Yeah, you use them. You use what you got. The biggest problem in our vulnerability in this country is that we are divided a lot. We're not only divided maybe half and half from conservatives to liberal thinking, we're divided on individual, especially on the liberal side, individual interests, you know, whether it's the gay rights and all of that, or trans and everything. Those people, that's what they think. That's their priority over anything else. There's really shallow thinking that this country here gives them the right to be any way they want to be. Show you how stupid it is. Some of those people that are gay said, let's gays for Palestine. I mean, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard of. I think it'd be pretty entertaining, but it'd be pretty sad because they go over there and
Done.
Throw them right off a building, except in Gaza there's not enough tall buildings. I don't have to do something. Maybe the rubble, they could use rocks and stone them, but they would.
That's how primitive it is, right? I mean, that's a real thing.
That's a real thing.
It's a real thing.
Yeah, it's and they say it is. I mean, we got an enemy that says what they believe in, and here we are, not coming together on a lot of things. You know, here we took action and attacked the nuclear facilities, and we got people in the United States that are objecting to that. It's divided. When are we going to get a cause that is so significant that brings us together? People that don't usually sit and talk together need to come together when you have a common enemy. What is that going to take? I don't know. That's why religion was very powerful in some wars, because that was all for the religion. So they got together. Denominations now have diluted some of that. You know, if you're a Methodist or a Lutheran, I'm not gonna, we won't be together. We're different. Maybe I'll be misunderstood with that one, but you talk religion to politics at a Thanksgiving dinner, it's not healthy. But here we are. We've got some vulnerabilities, and they aren't going away. They aren't going away unless we get attacked to the level that other countries have been attacked, and they are coming together. There may be disagreements on how to fight the war, but the idea is to fight and to win it.
Is 9/11 probably the last time you think we were pretty unified as a country?
Oh, we were
pretty.
Everybody was proud of that. I mean, listen to the songs that came out of that, patriotic songs, and it was magnificent what they did, and in moving that entire military might several thousands of miles across the ocean. No one else can do that. We do it, and we can. We haven't lost that ability, but if we sit around long enough, someone else will gain that ability. But it's always been said that if America was ever beaten, it's going to be from within. And unfortunately, no matter how good our hardware is, how magnificent those B-2s are and those bunker busters that went in there, how good that technology is, it won't make a difference at all if we lose within.
Yeah. And you think it was pretty effective what they accomplished? I mean, I'm seeing mixed reports. It's
on that bunker buster deal?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I was always a little skeptical, dubious maybe about. I know they could hit the target. I know they can. We got some great military minds that can plan the deception and can you imagine to refueling those airplanes to take the load off? They need a lot of extra fuel to lift off, but once they lift off, they didn't need all that extra fuel, so then they could put the fuel in to continue on the flight, and they did it several times. But I just being involved in military operations, no matter how complicated or minor it is, it takes coordination. We do it pretty darn good. The fact that we could do it was remarkable. The fact that we could put those bombs right there is amazing, and put them right on top of each other and drill the hole down. Whether they destroyed it, I don't know. Maybe we know before this comes out. It's just not live. It'll be out real soon. But we've got people on our own side criticizing the effectiveness of it. Why would they do that?
Yeah.
It emboldened the enemy, and if you're criticizing because you don't want to go to war and you embolden the enemy, then you're prolonging the war, making the war more deadly to more people. So I think we need to get together and I don't know, I'm dreaming now. As I walk around in a daze on why in the hell do some of these people, our politicians, even think about what they're saying and even criticize the fact that we have done this. Should be proud of it. We did it.
Yeah.
I think we saved lives. So back to your question, whether all that uranium was in the ground when we attacked it, I don't know. Maybe they hauled it away before if they believed that we were going to do it. Mm-hmm. I would do it. I would have moved the stuff. I don't know that we have any yet have detected uranium radioactivity. I don't know that we have.
Yeah.
It should be a lot of it out there if we mixed it all up, unless we sealed it totally. And I think we're going to be hearing about the bomb damage assessment for weeks and months after this. Someday we'll know. But one thing it did do is tell our enemy that we have that capability and no place is safe.
Yeah, for sure. That's for sure.
It doesn't have to be a target that's 300 feet in the ground and you can only reach 200. It could be other targets too. Mm-hmm. That would, the other thing, Brad, we dropped some 2,000, 20,000 pound bombs in Vietnam out of the back of a C-130, and they weren't penetrating. They detonated over the jungle canopy to make an instant LZ landing zone. And I heard a story by someone that when they first went to Afghanistan and they were negotiating with these tribal people. Did we mention this before?
I don't know.
I don't think so. I know I told somebody recently about helping the Northern Alliance, helping the Americans against the Taliban, and supposedly they had orchestrated dropping this big bomb out of a C-130, and according to the source, said they had some money and they were paying for their equipment, and they would give you some money to help us, and then they said, "Look over there." And the bomb dropped, and it was a hell of an explosion. Looked like a nuclear blast. We'll sign up. That impressed him. We'll join. And I'm pretty sure that's a true story because he said he saw it. But anyway, I think getting back to our vulnerabilities, when you just think, you've been back east recently in New York, doing some things, and just think of the transportation, how you could disrupt that, the tunnel system.
Oh, quick.
Oh, the tunnel system is scary, people. I think the enemy picked aircraft many years ago, starting in about the 70s when they started hijacking them. But they picked aircraft because that's terrifying to think that, you could blow it up and you fall out of the sky. I think that's why they did it. It's terrorizing them. But they could pick targets, so these tunnels that go under the ocean or rivers and stuff. I don't think you'd have to do much. You wouldn't even have to blow one up. You just leave an empty bag of a rucksack there with pieces of alarm clock and whatever and the remnants of a bomb and somebody to get their attention.
Yeah. It's
an oversimplification, but we seem to react so much.
Yeah.
As a country.
So if you were trying to be more proactive, what would you change? How would you, because we are reactive.
Well, I don't know if it's even possible, but I'd take it back to the Alaska scenario where I got the Alaska Natives to sign on and help. They're involved.
Yeah.
The Alaska Natives and some of the bureaucracy, and they didn't get along, but they did in this. So you figure out a way to get people together with a common mission. And that takes leadership. It takes somebody that is not afraid that you could make a mistake. That's what some of the criticisms that I had when I did that, reaching out to the Alaska Natives, was that, well, how do you know it's going to work? What if they overreact or something? I said, come on, we're being attacked. We need to take the chance. They're Americans. We got to make them believe that what they have is at risk. Mm-hmm. And it worked. The other thing I did that I took a lot of heat for is there weren't many Muslims in Alaska, in Anchorage, but there was mosques, very small. I said, let's contact them. If they really believe in that these are extremists and fundamentalists, they'll point them out too,
yeah,
and help us out. Boy, I got a lot of pushback from the newspapers, politicians, and everybody. You can't be talking to you can't get into the religion. It's separation of religion and state. Come on, that's where we're overreacting on some of that. We can't do it because we have to separate religion from the state.
Making it too literal.
Yeah. If you can't do what your brain tells you to do using common sense, you're gonna lose. You can lose. And what's going to get us back together is, unfortunately, something that's big that would unite all of the different individual groups to say, okay, we got to get into this together, And that's.
You think we have so many groups in the United States now between religion and different things and gender and blah 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 that we're just slicing our community up into so many things that we're becoming ineffective as to be able to even bring all the groups together?
Yeah, it's going to get harder and harder, and the more we continue down this trail, the bigger the threat has got to be. And it can't be a threat anymore. It has to be let's say we were attacked again. I think the United States people would just come together. Those that are against us, I wouldn't stick your foot out in the street if things were bad, and you got in the way with mama protecting her kids. Look out. You know, the old saying is, I'd rather attack a grizzly bear than a mama moose protecting her calves. That's deadly. And that's kind of what we got to do, is figure out, hopefully we're not attacked, and hopefully we can muddle along. But the problem is, since 9/11 and now, you can see we're getting worse. I mean, our individuality is getting extreme. It's even, we had an episode on crime, and I can't even comprehend politicians telling people to get together to attack ICE. And let's say those people that are inciting riots and all are going to be contributing to our effort in protecting ourselves. Because there was some idiot that was talking about getting the gang members to go attack ICE, get together. But I have my ideas what we ought to do with somebody like that, but they ought to be in jail. Yeah. I mean, that's treason. I think the president has declared that we have a state of emergency with this terrorism threat and the gang threat. What is treason? I don't know. I think some of their treasonous activities and words.
Yeah, that word gets thrown out a lot. I mean, everybody wants to use it now, treason. They say it about Trump.
Yeah, well, treason is one of those things you can only be called treasonous if you lose. If you win, then let's say if you win, then they were treasonous, they were against you. But you're going against a tyrannical government or a tyrannical segment of our society, and you have a right to do that. But if you lose, you're a treason. You're a traitor or whatever. Kind of weird, isn't it?
Well, it means win.
Yeah, but let's face it. The one thing we got going for us is I honestly believe that if the enemy felt that we have a legitimate enemy, they felt they could attack us and get away with it, they would do it. They haven't yet, since 9/11. And you asked about the effectiveness of those bombs, the B-2s and those bunker busters. I don't know how effective they were in obliterating the uranium, enriched uranium or whatever. But it was effective in demonstrating that we have this capability.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing else. Just like that big bomb that they dropped out of a C-130, that had an effect. People understand it. It had an effect. Mm-hmm. And, another example of this, and we've drifted a little bit from our insider threat, but what you have is when we every time we have an escalation and a threat against our enemy, whether Russia, China, whatever, it's brilliant to demonstrate our capabilities with the cruise missiles and all of that, because I remember there was a pretty serious threat. I forget the date and time it was, but we launched 100 and some cruise missiles, Tomahawks, and like 100% of them hit their target. Right after the Russians sent a bunch of them, and a lot of them lobbed out into the desert and missed their targets and all that. I don't think, I know that some of those military show of force is a little more than show of force to demonstrate our capability. And so I think the attack on that nuclear facility, or those nuclear facilities, was a benefit. Sure. Could possibly lead to this. I hope it's peace, but it's more like a truce. They've been fighting, Israel and Iran's been fighting for 1,000 years or something. It's a long time. Yeah.
Really? 1,000 years?
Oh, I mean, the Persians and the Jews.
Yeah.
Been a long time.
Who's our biggest threat as an enemy?
Who's our biggest threat? I would say Russia, quite frankly. The big. I say that mainly because I know the Chinese a little bit, because I worked with some. The Chinese people are more capitalistic. They're that they really are, and the Chinese Communist Party is a small percentage of the overall population of China, and China has a lot of potential adversaries on their border, or the ring around their country. So I'm sure they're considering, if they were to ever launch an attack on us, that they would have to deal with their borders close to home. So
who are our allies on their border?
Who are allies?
Who are our allies on their border?
Well, when I say the border, South Korea, Japan, Australia, and then we have Mongolia that we have relationships with, and then Thailand and those countries. Vietnam doesn't like China, actually. So there's a lot of pieces there that the Chinese have to deal with, the Chinese Communist Party have to deal with. Russia, on the other hand, seems to be more nationalistic, even though they're not communists now, but even when they were, just a small percentage of the Soviet Union with members of the Communist Party or communists, the rest were just the people. But I think that one of the vulnerabilities that we have there is that Russia has been involved in war more recently. China hasn't really been involved in a war in a long, long time. They did show their face in Korea in the 50s, but other than that, since World War II, they divide. They liked us. I mean, when the World War II was over, Chiang Kai-shek went to Taiwan, and then there was the element that went to Thailand and the Golden Triangle area, and then Mao Zedong stayed on the mainland. But so there's division there. But we're going to drift away from this a little bit. But I'll make a final statement on thought: is the biggest problem that the world faces now is that war has become almost sterile. So it's the military leaders that are fighting it, and the people are just kind of coming along. In Iran, it's the mullahs and Ayatollah Khomeini, and at war with Israel. I don't know where the people stand on this. And Israel and the United States, we took great attempt not to attack the people. So that's good, but it may not put the pressure on the people putting pressure on the government. I'll be misunderstood on that too, but that's when we make war so sterile, it doesn't put the people in a hardship. The United States is at war, and most of the people don't feel it. We haven't been attacked. When we are, we'll come together, and I hope it doesn't take that. But it's been an interesting topic here.
Yeah,
it's a common sense approach. If someone says they're going to kill you, believe them. And you need to do whatever you got to do to protect the country, and that's the president's doing that. I just I pray that our politicians get together and support one objective. And once we commit, then we're all in it. I don't see that yet. So, Brad, what do you think? What's the center been doing lately?
The center is coming upon the 4th of July. We're going to have some hot dogs out front and have some people come through. But we want all the listeners to log on to AmericanValueCenter.org, DrewDixPodcast.com, subscribe to our YouTube channel. look at our products. Our quote book is a great gift, and certainly we need your support on the podcast. So tell your family and friends about tuning in and listening to Drew, and then my every once in a while interjection. But yeah, that's about it.
Well, thank you, and I hope you stay tuned to us. And you know, the whole idea that we talk about is common sense, and common sense means that you don't tolerate poor behavior, because tolerance is a character flaw.
Just because no one knows doesn't mean it isn't true.